Hi, I'm Christy McDonald, and thanks so much for joining me here for the Daily Plus. We're going to be doing something a little different this time around, and we're going to take a step back and look at what happened here in Michigan 6 months ago. It was February 13th when we all got the news that there was an active shooter on the campus of Michigan State University. When it was all over, 3 students were killed, 5 students were wounded, an entire community just horrified. We are not going to be looking back and rehashing what happened that night, but really looking at where things stand now as thousands of students head back to school for the fall semester. There's new security at buildings. They're going to be planning a memorial, and the untold stories of the first responders who are still dealing with what they heard and saw. Fall at Michigan State University is always a magical time. The promise of a new school year, the beauty of campus in East Lansing center stage. And for students, they will get to hang out and study again at the MSU Student Union. Both the Union and Berkey Hall, where the shootings happened in February, will be back open. For now, Berkey will only be open to faculty and grad students. Undergrad classes will be there in the spring of '24. MSU administration also just announced that there won't be classes on February 13th as they mark the anniversary of the tragedy. The campus community will get input on how the day should be marked and what kind of event will be held. And a permanent memorial is in the works on campus to remember those students lost: Brian Frazier, Alexandria Verner, and Ariel Anderson, as well as the 5 students injured in the shooting. The school says it will take $300,000 from the Spartan Strong Fund to make that memorial happen. When something like this happens, it really takes a lot of time for people to process the grief and the shocking nature of it, the fact that things can change in just a moment. For ER doctors and first responders, that trauma is part of their training, but experience something like this really never leaves you. Nick Monticelli has the untold stories of the ER docs at Sparrow and how they're still healing today.
The images we see on the news during a horrific incident like this are usually the ones we remember. The massive police response, the hunt for the shooter, the grief, and the victims. But rarely, if ever, do we talk about what happens inside hospitals during those horrific incidents. It is the storm within a storm. At Sparrow Hospital that night, waves of victims, their families, and healthcare providers coming in on their own.
I was the manager on call. I was at dinner, got a phone call, and I was here in about 15 minutes.
Corey Dropping is the nursing manager for Sparrow's emergency department. She and Dr. Denny Martin, Sparrow's chief medical officer, and Dr. Ben Mosher, Sparrow's trauma medical director, were all there that night, treating the young victims, trying to forget what was happening outside.
It's just you kick in, I've been doing this for almost 10 years. It's like you kick into a different mode, and you're treating the patient in front of you, and you try to shut everything else out that's going on in the outside world.
If I focus on the events of this, see what happened, the anger of whoever, this, that, or the other, political, whatever it is, I can't focus on that because you just get too caught up. I'm like, who's at fault? Doesn't matter. I need to take care of you. All I care about is you.
But remember, it took hours before the shooter was found, and Sparrow Hospital is only about 2 miles from MSU's campus. While treating patients, they're also dealing with logistics and safety.
How do we coordinate our public safety team to make sure an unknown shooter, where for a period of time we didn't know where he was, is our campus safe? He was really close. How are we going to handle the families when they start coming in and realize that their student was one of the ones that was injured?
Denny, you got a little choked up in your first press conference talking about the people, your people that came into the hospital. What happened that night?
People came here to help. Literally, we made very few calls that, very specialty people that we need. Everyone just showed up.
This is what they call the trauma hall inside of Sparrow Hospital. These are the rooms that were used to help the victims that night. And this is the place that all those workers came running in, knowing that help was going to be needed.
We were overstaffed at a period of time, and we've not felt that way in a long time, but really just the best of people came out, which it doesn't surprise me. Healthcare, it truly is a calling. It takes a unique person to work in healthcare, especially in the environment, post-pandemic, everything we've been through for the past few years. So it was tragic and sad, but that was special to see that.
How proud are you of your staff and the way things went that night?
There was just so many people working together in emergency department to help this run smooth, and it went as good as we could expect.
Did you lose track of how many people were there?
Yeah, definitely. Because you're trying to assist with the patients, you're trying to speak with families, you're trying to coordinate staff, you're trying to just be in everywhere. Like you said, you're one person trying to be in multiple places at once, and you look up and there's 6 more people that had showed up waiting to come and help.
What's that like for you? Any emotions just seeing people run in the building, knowing that?
It was very moving. Like, I walked out of the OR at 2 o'clock in the morning and thought, I'm going to hand in my letter of resignation. I can't do this anymore. But after going around and talking with all the people and thanking all the people that showed up, I was like, I had a different view of my job after that.
In all, Sparrow estimates 100 extra providers came in that night. Doctors, nurses, technicians, and more. They say the people that came in 6 months ago are the same people, the same family, helping each other get through it today.
I don't know that we'll ever be the same after that. It's not normal. It shouldn't be a part of everyday life seeing stuff like this. So it's I think that's really, to me, it's felt as the leader of the organization. It's felt more like family than it probably has for.
Yeah. No, I'd say absolutely. Yeah, it's a group. This group of people helps me cope with it. The strength of the group of people have always been part of what's helped me cope with it.
At Sparrow Hospital in Lansing, Nick Monticelli, Local 4.
All right, when we come back, we're going to be talking about safety, some of the changes at Michigan State University, and what any college student needs to remember when they head back to campus this fall. Stay with me. The shooting at Michigan State University had a lot of colleges and universities looking at their safety measures to make sure that they were up to date and in line. Darnell Blackburn is our crime and safety expert here at Local 4, former police officer, even serving at Michigan State University. Thanks so much for joining me for this. I can't believe it has been 6 months since the tragedy at Michigan State. Talk to us a little bit about what a college university now has to think about when it comes to updating safety after something so catastrophic like this happens.
Well, Christy, the biggest thing is thinking about how you secure such a large body. Even if it's a small institution, it's still a large body, and most campuses are open. And so having an open campus makes it a huge challenge to manage something like this, to manage or to put a plan in place to prevent it from happening, because there's so many access points.
And how long did you serve with Michigan State?
About 7.5, 8 years.
7.5 and 8 years. And so you can kind of understand now that some of the things that they're considering and thinking about. We know that they are now installing locks on the inside of classrooms, and they're restricting access at certain points, at certain times to buildings that you need to use your key card. What are some other things that universities specifically now in this day and age are looking at?
A lot of them are doing drills that they never did before. Speaking of, we can talk about ALICE drills, just threat assessment drills, and some universities are offering like body language classes to teach students how to spot something that may be awry. So they're doing things that you would never conceive of doing before, especially from my time many moons ago being a student.
Absolutely. I was a student at Michigan State University, and I think it's all of our kids are taking on these, you've got little ones who are doing ALICE drills in elementary and in middle school right now, but this is the world that we're living in, that we are assessing potential threats all around us in open society. What would you say to the thousands of kids who are heading back to Michigan State this fall, and really any university, about assessing their safety at all times?
Just don't put yourself in a box where you just feel like it can't happen to you, because we've seen this. I mean, it happens everywhere. And by the same token, don't be just so panicked. Just plan. Just think about, just when you go into a room, think about how many exits there are in this room. Think about if you have to leave quickly, and you have to live, but you just have to live wisely and think more strategically than you've ever had to think before.
And also, I think for parents too, who let their young people go and they're adults, they're starting to figure out what the world is. I know that parents also have a lot of questions about kind of what information they should be equipping their kids with when they go off to college.
Yeah. Parents can reach out to the public safety departments on campus. They can talk to public safety, have liaisons liaisons now, public safety officers, information officers. They can just access that information by going to police departments now, because a lot of the campus police departments, most of them should and are doing these types of trainings, and they're becoming more of a hard target than a soft target as best they possibly can.
In terms of Michigan State, is it one of those things that, I mean, it's almost a new role that the police have to take on campus? Would you say in the last 6 months maybe have changed?
You know, they've always done the training. The training, this type of training has been done for years, believe it or not. Now, it's done and it's been modified more because of the number of shootings that we've had.
Sure.
But in terms of the role itself, it's just that we see it more prevalently and we saw it there. So they have to just adjust, and they have to continually, like putting locks on the insides of doors as opposed to the outsides. Those things are ever evolving and ever changing. And there's such a hard balance between public safety and the freedom of a student to be able to come. Exactly.
Yeah,
have
absolutely.
access.
One thing that I really zero in on, though, Darnell, is communication. And coming from the university and university police, when a situation like this arises, how crucial is that to make sure that good information is getting out and the student body feels that they have been informed?
So important. It's so important for, number one, lives, to save lives. Number two, to make sure that you don't pass out information where a suspect cannot be caught, because so many people are disseminating bad information.
Right.
So communication is critical. And one of the things that MSU did was they did a phenomenal job of communicating this information. It's interesting. Personally, I got a call from a very dear friend of mine's. His wife called me and said, "Hey, there's an active shooter on campus." And my response was, "No, it can't be." I mean, she got a text right away when it happened, and you know, as a parent, she got the text and reached out to her daughter. So, I mean, communication from when the incident occurs or first starts, communication while the incident is going on, as much as they can to keep people safe. But it's so essential to make sure that if this does happen, that it can be stopped as soon as possible.
Yeah, and that people can remain calm or know what to do next. Darnell Blackburn, thanks so much for joining me. A lot of really great perspective. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
All right, stay with me, because coming up next, we're going to talk about that Spartan Strong Fund and what they're going to be doing with that money. Stay with me. Welcome back to the Daily Plus as we take a look at the 6 months since the shooting at Michigan State University and the healing that continues. We do have some encouraging news about one of the shooting victims who is still in recovery. Nate Stately, he's a junior. He was shot in his class at Berkey Hall. His family just a few weeks ago said he is doing better. He's expected to come home from an inpatient rehab center soon, but he has a long road ahead of him. And this is really the difficult part. Nate's family has filed a lawsuit against the university for negligence, and he is not the only one. 7 of the 8 victims in the MSU shooting have filed some kind of suit against the university. And the university did put out a statement, and I want to read some of that to you. They said they're heartbroken over the tragic loss of life, and they're going to continue to work with the families, those impacted by what happened. University is also looking now at a $2 million Spartan Strong Fund, all of the people who donated money after the shooting. And this is what they say that they're going to do with it. Go ahead and take a look. We're going to break it down for you. $1 million of that will go to students and faculty directly affected by the shooting, especially the injured students. And it will also go to people who were in classrooms or nearby the shooting, about 50 people. $500,000 will go to reimburse for mental health services for those affected. $200,000 will support healing and resilience programming for students, staff, and first responders. And of course, as we told you earlier on in the show, $300,000 of it will go to building a memorial on campus. It can't change what happened, of course, but it is part of the journey of healing. You know, I had a chance to talk earlier this spring to MSU basketball coach Tom Izzo. After the shooting, students really turned to him as kind of the father figure of the university, and we talked about what happened after the shooting on campus. And he had a message actually for the class of 23 who had gone through so much and were graduating this spring. So what would you say to the class of 23 graduating this weekend?
I'd say you're as important of a class as we've had in a lot of years. I think they've learned, our country has changed a lot. We've had the social injustice we've had all in the last 4 or 5 years. We've had COVID. We've had more tragedies on a lot of campuses. So they're our future, man. You are our future. And somebody in that class is going to be president. Somebody. And I hope we got some good difference makers out of Michigan State. People who can make a difference. They're special people. They've made it through it. Now, are they willing to confront the problems and demand that there's change? Can we confront the problems that we all have that aren't right about our world right now? And can we fight the demand that they change? That takes a special person. You're the class that can do it.
And you can see my entire interview with Tom Izzo right here on Local 4 Plus. And that is going to do it here for the Daily Plus. I'm Christy McDonald. Thanks so much for joining us. And for all of us here at Local 4 News, take care, and we'll see you again.